Hello, so this is my final reflection of semester 1, 2000 of the year 2025, and my name is Bella Cruz Lopez. So this portion is going to be about the empowered learner, and honestly, I think I really want to emphasize on the fact that I have been a lot more resourceful with my time, because I'm going to be honest here, from freshman year to sophomore year, I was absolutely the biggest procrastinator on the planet. I would never turn in my work on time. I would always do it at the very last minute. I would always somewhat just never do the work because it never really interested me, or it never really caught my attention. And although I do understand the subjects, I do understand what I'm doing. I know my facts and stats. I know what I'm doing once again. But I feel like because of that and the assignments that are constantly bombarded to me, I was never really appealed to the whole doing this assignment for a grade, because I know at the end of the day it's going to be my knowledge, which kind of really withdrew me from the whole empowered learner quota. And I still struggled at the beginning of the year because, like I said again, I can't control it. It's kind of an impulse, and I'm trying to work on that. I still somewhat struggle, and before I used to struggle a lot keeping consistent with my work, because one day that I missed was a whole day of chaos that I would have to regain, and honestly, it just really stressed me out. It really made me anxious. It made me a lot of feelings that really withdrew me from becoming more empowered as a learner. And now I can say with confidence that I at least know when it's time to submit and working on an assignment, because ever since I actually started keeping track of what my goals were gonna be, using paper notes, using reminders, my long-term goals, all these kinds of stuff that I have planned for my future are actual things that I will look back at, because same goes, I had an assignment for what was it called? Yeah, English 9, and I still look back at it and remind myself of why I want to study in the first place. And now that I really look back at it, now that I'm actually starting to analyze everything, it made me realize that being an empowered learner is also being able to be responsible with your time, knowing what you want, and just kind of all in general to really immerse yourself in not only English but also in your other classes, because these portraits of a graduate not only like prominent and present within the AP language and composition class, but you can also see it in like various situations. You can see it with your friends, you can see it in your other classes, you can see it with your family. Hence, you can even see it in a video game if you're brave enough. And honestly, one of the highlights of being an empowered learner, or one way where I really shined through it all, was reading 1984 Book 3. It's really dumb, and it probably makes no sense at all at first, but I think I really want to elaborate on this. So at first, when we set up our calendar for the 1984 reading over the Thanksgiving break, I really thought to myself that I was kind of going to be not persuaded enough to actually read the book, but I decided maybe I'll read a couple chapters, because I also, on a more personal note, I have been reading a lot of manga and manhwa, and I feel that because of that, I was able to actually enjoy, even if it's just really small bubble text. It made me realize that reading is actually a really enjoyable thing if you just find the things that you like. Some people may not like 1984, but there are other books that catch others' interest. And I remember looking back at it, and I kept telling myself, one more chapter to actually, not push myself to the point where I'm sleeping with the book, until I realized I ended up reading the whole book. And honestly, I really never regret that decision, because I was immersed in so much was going on within the book that I completely forgot about time. I never timed myself. I never cared about the fact that I was going like an hour over. I never really cared about anything. I was just so immersed into the book, and I feel like that's a really amazing fact factor in which people become an empowered learner. Because I feel, now that I really think about it, I feel that when you like something, you don't care about the repercussions. You don't care about the time you spend on it. You don't care about the quality of it. If you like it, you're going to like it, no matter what book it is. And even if you become sort of, how do I explain it? I think I might need to rephrase that. But I feel like being an empowered learner in itself, or rather as more of like, as what one is personally interested in, I feel that reading the book 1984 really helped me immerse in actually learning and wanting to continue reading the book, because I did end up finishing it in one sitting, and I still remember that day. I still remember texting my friend. And not only that, but you're also, by becoming an empowered learner, you also kind of become a teacher in that, to an extent. I wouldn't say like with a degree or anything, but I would most likely say that because you learn the knowledge, you learn how to be more resourceful throughout the year, you know how to be goal oriented. I feel like there's so much anticipation, there's so much excitement that you just can't keep it to yourself. You actually have to go out there, express yourself, and actually kind of be, willing to learn and willing to serve about it. That's probably an FFA reference right there. But I feel like being an empowered learner also really wants you to become an empowered I want to say advisor, but I also wouldn't say teacher. Instructor. I'm not really sure. But now that I really look back at it, once again, for the second time, I feel that also the testimonies, because I really enjoy the testimonies. I really enjoy most of the monthly testimonies that we do, because it also really helps me reflect on what I've actually done in the month. Because usually I forget things. I forget things really quick. I have a short-term memory. I don't know what's wrong with that, but honestly, when I actually highlight the things that happened in my month, the goals I accomplished, any positive occurrences, it honestly helps me retain a lot more information easier. And honestly, I really enjoy it, because I feel that the monthly testimonies are supposed to be a place where you can kind of share your own humor, your own kind of moments where you shine. Because I think we're all main characters in our own life. And to be more specific, I really enjoy my monthly testimonies, the videos, because like you've mentioned before, that they become a way to really express yourself, to really see a side of the student you don't get to see often, because we're such a professional workspace. And from that, I can really say that these testimonies, these unique testimonies, also become an inspiration to the other people who want to learn, who want to become more goal-oriented, or who simply just want to try things out. Because I feel like some people actually thrive on experiencing things at the moment, rather than setting up goals and everything, and that's okay, of course. But I feel that being able to become an empowered learner, and also wanting to empower the learners, is a really strong asset, especially on my end, of what I've learned to become an empowered learner in the portrait of a graduate. This portion will be the emotionally intelligent of the portrait of a graduate. And honestly, I really like the monthly testimonies. The monthly testimonies really allowed me to understand my emotions better. And I feel that now that I actually look back at it, because I was I was going through I gotta stop saying I was going through all my testimonies. I was reading them one by one, and I feel that analyzing it further, emotional intelligence is not only about the ones around us. In fact, it was actually understanding ourselves through the rough patches, because I tend to be really closeted about my struggles, since I grew up in a really toxic, I wouldn't say necessarily toxic, but in a more conservative, not conservative, but not politically, but in a more conservative household, where mental health still really isn't fully addressed, where the parents are supposed to be the ones struggling while we basically do nothing and scratch our butts, with all due respect. And honestly, it just made me more aware of what I'm actually going through. it made me realize how much a person can endure in even just a month. It also made not only me but my friends realize that you can actually become more emotionally intelligent when you actually start to understand parts of yourself. There was this one friend that really stood out to me, and she is always telling me to be myself no matter what people think. And that's very cliche, since that's what basically everyone tells you, but even when you're with your friends, it feels like sometimes you end up putting a personality that you're not really comfortable with, due to the fact that they may not like it. But at the end of the day, friends will like you for who you are. So when you open yourself to the max and you actually express the feelings that you want to, I feel that the monthly testimonies were also a really great opportunity for me to express a more vulnerable side of myself to Miss Garcia. And honestly, I need to stop saying honestly. I need to hire my diction. But monthly testimonies also allow me to explore issues that other people truly care about. And not necessarily explore other issues, but I would kind of say like explore more further on what people actually go through in their own times and what they do as a person, because everyone goes to school, everyone's an academic achiever, but we don't know anything else besides that. And that also goes back to that not everyone has the same goals, and that's okay. We all have different places we want to go to. We all have different goals that we want to achieve. We all have different dreams, and that's totally okay. And I tend to be really happy when people share their monthly testimonies, because it really demonstrates to me that these students, like you mentioned before, these are going to be our future attorneys. These are going to be our future engineers. And I want someone with an utmost personality and a person outside of their main subject. And honestly, throughout this whole and going back to the class discussions, book 2 and the book 3 class discussion, it really made me understand that there are many perceptions of love and how people cope around these loves. And it was really obvious from the start that Winston never really loved Julia. But from there, we all collectively agreed. But from there were so many ideas that were going around all over the place, which made me realize that there are many perceptions that, honestly, feelings tend to be very subjective. They tend to vary from an individual to another one. And because of these class discussions about more of an emotional appeal, they made me really become fond of the fact that everyone has a different meaning, and that also their environment tends to impact the way they perceive things, which honestly really, I need to stop saying honestly, which goes back to Jimmy Santiago Waka. We keep dragging him, Miss Garcia, we keep dragging him, and that's a good thing, but I really want to talk about other people, and that's okay. Yes, he grew up in a really poor environment. He grew up in a really discarded place in life. I wouldn't say discarded, but in a really bad place in life. But after it all took one person. It all took one person to change his perception in life. He turned his life upside down, and where he is now, he's writing books, he's reading them, and he wishes to expand more beyond just that. And furthermore, the upcoming blog really helped me figure out my own emotional appeals, and by that, I sort of mean that I was able to splurt out words that I would never talk to anyone about, because I have many different perceptions of what other definitions are. I have a different perception about love. I have a different perception about addiction, obsession, and so on, so on, so on. And how do I tell you? Our coloring sheet with about our truths also really helped me understand why I am the person I am. Why, and kind of the question that always brings me back to is, why am I passionate about becoming an attorney? Because I want to become an attorney. Why am I passionate about becoming an attorney? Is there an emotional appeal that really impacted my life? That's usually the question that I go about throughout my life. And also, more on that, the blog comments also really helped me discover the many rhetorical appeals that go into making a emotionally persuasive piece. And I have done a lot of argumentative speeches. I have done speech and debate. And honestly, a lot of people tend to go through a more emotional appeal. They tend to be based more on a factual than actually emotional. They tend to be a lot more more emotionally persuaded rather than like statistically persuaded. And because of that, I feel that in order to actually understand the audience and really immerse yourself into creating a really strong rhetorical piece, you really need to lay the foundation of being emotionally intelligent. And going back, all in all, I feel that being an emotionally intelligent learner is not only just about helping the other people around you. It's also about being nice, being kind, being self-affirmative to yourself, because when we lack any kind of positivity within ourselves but we give it out to the world, it's never going to work. You're just going to continue living in a circuit where you're always going to be unsatisfied and hollow. And that concludes the portion of the emotionally intelligent side of the portrait of a graduate. And this is another one of my favorites, which is the culturally competent portion of the portrait of a graduate. And to begin, the quotes help me explore people from my culture. I know a lot about my culture. I know a lot about Hispanic culture. Yet, I really want to expand more, or I really want to emphasize on more Native Mexican or Native Americans who live in Mexico or were born in Mexico. Why did I say that twice? Rather than to sticking to a solely more Hispanic and more common genre, because I'm still struggling with my identity. I'm still struggling on who I am. I do know I'm Zapoteco, which comes from Mexico, yet I still doubt myself whether I am truly Native American or not. Simply because I was most of my heritage comes from Oaxaca and the Zapotec tribes, and I really want to expand more on like Native American Hispanic, not necessarily Hispanic, but Native American tribes who lived in the Southern American region, is what I would say. And I really want to expand on that because I'm still confused about myself. I know I mentioned that multiple times, but I really want to be seen. I want to be heard. There are some points in my life where I tend to question whether or not I'm actually Zapotec, I'm actually Mexican. On the contrary, where my physical appearance would say otherwise. But I feel that maybe we can do more of a work on what an actual Native American tends to go through, and I will do my research on that if we are able to actually put in a little effort and search for Native American in Southern Latin territories. I would be more than happy to help you, Miss Garcia. But honestly, our RJ highlights, such as like the who's the resourceful trailblazer, this and that, were another great way to explore and look for change within my community. Like I mentioned before, we may have dragged Jimmy Santiago Vaca a little too much, but honestly, it made me want to explore more about why and how can we prevent these issues arising with poverty. I want to say immigration is an issue, but I would just kind of say that it's more like a natural human thing. And I really how do I tell? Because I'm not only really interested in my culture, I am also really interested in Asian culture as well. Please don't come at me, Miss Garcia. But honestly, I tend to make a lot of connections with Japanese culture and how that I can also use that in the AP Language and Composition course that you're offering. And through this, I was able to sort of analyze and really emphasize on the fact that we all kind of live in different places. Of course, we're all not born into the same culture, and that's fine. But I feel where people tend to draw the line is where things start to get odd. to their standards. For example, when people eat raw fish rather than cooked fish, rather than cooked salmon, that's where people tend to draw a line, and I feel that's really degrading. And I feel like we need to have more representation when it comes to our appreciate to becoming more culturally competent. And honestly, the GOAT quotes, or the greatest quotes of all time, I really wanted to include more Asian based, or anyone who really wants to seek, who really has the same goals for me. And I feel that we can also kind of like find a way to merge cultures as well. I don't really have a lot to talk about here, since I really want to emphasize on a lot of characters, but they really don't correlate back to the whole culture and community thing that this classroom has really based on in itself. But yes, I try my best to implement whatever I learned in AP Lang back to Japanese class, and from Japanese class to AP Lang, vice versa. Because when you really understand culture, you really understand humanity more. Not everyone's going to like the same things as you do. Not everyone is going to try the same things as you. It's kind of the same way we all have different music tastes. Some people like rap. Some people like rap. Some people like K-pop. Some people like Hindi music, and that's totally fine. But when it comes to the point where you're making fun of people and you're actually degrading them based on of what they like, it's really dehumanizing. But the difference is that when it becomes culture that you're laughing about, they can't control that. And that's where the huge barrier comes in, where we kind of need to close, or like at least make shorter, like an asymptote. But as for now, I feel that the whole topic of culture really made me reflect on how little Oaxaqueños are recognized. Honestly, I'm going to say this with the sincerity of my heart. I really want more representation. I want more Oaxaqueño representation. Because throughout my life, I have been very much bullied and mocked and made fun of. And I still do to this day. Even by a couple of friends. Due to the fact that I'm from Oaxaca. And I sometimes shun myself, but even then, like outside of school, I am a very proud woman with my heritage. I am proud to be from a place where quesillo exists. I'm proud to be a place where clayudas, my religious mother, La Virgen de Joquila. It's really saddening to see that there's a lot of people who still are racist within their own race. And I feel like that's where we really need to emphasize on the fact to be culturally competent is to be caring, is to be considerate. Even just being considerate takes you a long way. And that's why I feel that being culturally competent is actually, hot take, one of the most important things to actually consider, or rather actually learn to become. Because when we become culturally competent, we actually get work done. As you can see right now in this political estate, we are actually very much divided on culture. I don't want to point out certain people because I don't want to get too political, but certain governments attack certain groups, and we can connect that to a certain regime. If you know what I'm talking about, we can maybe connect that to a certain regime. The one with the swastika, yes. And I really want to emphasize, once again for the 30 millionth time, that being culturally competent is actually one of the biggest strengths humanity can have. Because when we become culturally competent, we not only become united, we explore different countries, we explore a new language, we explore different traditions. And I feel like that's such the beauty of humanity, where we actually appreciate the culture of life. And I feel that's something that we honestly take for granted. And that is the culturally competent of the portrait of a graduate portion. Ooh, I have another one to talk about. This portion will be the skilled communicator of the portrait of a graduate. So let's begin. I was able to express my views without judgment throughout the class conversations that we've had during this semester. And also the wow words really helped me explore more advanced vocabulary. I personally, the only word I actually used throughout the whole wow words thingy outside of class was fatuous. I really love fatuous. But even then, I tend to talk a lot of more slang with my friends. Yet when it comes to more professional writing, such as the blogs, such as argumentative essays, such as speeches, I was actually able to use a lot of these what words since they were really high in vocabulary. And I feel like that's a really important part of being a skilled communicator. You can create a really well argument just by really like basic diction alone. But when you add words such as inextricable, preliminary, proliferate, fatuous, it adds a hint of, oh, you're smart, oh, you know what you're saying kind of vibe. And I'm really here for that. And also, we're on the deep end when you really look at it, when you actually look at the words, when you actually look at the things that you tend to say, when you look at the class conversations, when you look at the Leonard Pitts, rhetoric is an essential part in the writing persuasive works. And I'm a witness, and I'm a survivor of that myself. I actually found myself using a lot of persuasive rhetoric, or when it came to my speeches for speech and debate, and I never realized how essential that is as well. And on another note, the collaborative conversations were the collaborative conversations that were more intimate, such as the one with the groups, with the partners. Oh my god, excuse me. I was able to share more personal testimony that relates to the book and how we can kind of benefit or fix from that. And it made me realize that being a skilled communicator is also kind of staying on a certain topic, such as given topics such as love, culture, community, and identity. And I feel that it's really important as well. I really have nothing else to say about that. And our blog post is what really stood out to me throughout the semester, since this was honestly one of the most prominent assignments that was actually correlated to being a skilled communicator, because the whole class itself, like you've mentioned before, it's to improve on your writing. It's to improve to actually write for your college applications. This is really one of the most fundamental classes you could probably take in your life and still actually use it outside what you want to do. And this made me realize as well that honestly, I really don't know what else to say. I think I might come back to it actually. And to further emphasize on that, most of the common rules I was actually familiar with, I used them unconsciously. More on a really personal note, I had a phase back in 6th grade, very young for whatever reason. No, actually it was 5th grade, yes. 5th grade, very young. I don't know what I was doing, but I wrote fanfiction. And when you're exposed to fanfiction, you either read one of the most grammatically unappealing works, or you read one of the most works that make you question whether or not Shakespeare was still alive. And I was exposed to both ends of the table. And I was actually using most of the common rules. I was actually using really high in vocabulary that I wasn't even aware it was actually high in vocabulary because of what I read. I was actually able to implement these transitions, sentences, words into becoming a more skilled communicator when it came to writing the blogs, the Leonard Pitts. I was never really fond of the Leonard Pitts because there were so many restrictions, and also because it was kind of short compared to my blog, to my actual About Me. But honestly, I kind of liked it. It was worth a shot. And after that, I really enjoyed my blog posts, like the About Me specifically, because since I was able to kind of freestyle it. I was able to use my own common rules. I was able to use some rhetorical appeals that I didn't even know that I didn't know I actually used. And this made me want to actually write more blogs. And I'm really excited about What Is Our Truth, because you're going to have a lot more creative space to express your ideas, because like I mentioned before, being able to imitate a writing is also kind of example of how a good writing is supposed to be. But you kind of take inspiration from that and you kind of make it your own, and you really match making your own. And I'm really excited for that, since I get to use a lot of like anaphora, analysis process, parallelism, pathos, the three main persuasive things. And it's really important to learn about these, because when you don't learn about these, you really can't create a strong argument. And I'm actually really excited for next year's speech and debate competition, because little me, I'm actually going to ask Miss Garcia you for help on my speech, and I'm really excited to actually implement what I've learned throughout AP Lang and actually like type it all out on my speech, and hopefully I can actually win a place. But what I'm trying to do now, in order to practice more of analyzing rhetorical appeals, is I'm actually starting another blog, and in that other blog, it's more of like a freestyle. I'm actually going to analyze songs and break down the many rhetorical devices that were used to effectively immerse the audience into songs, because you know, songs, especially throughout American audience, we actually connect through songs by personal and intimate lyrics, and sometimes intimate lyrics require rhetorical devices, rhetorical appeals, pathos, logos, ethos. All these different kinds of rhetorical devices can be used or are accidentally used in many songs, writings, even just speaking, because it kind of goes the same way when you're asking your parents if you can go somewhere. You're just not going to talk to them when they're mad. You're going to talk to them when they're happy. And you're going to use really specific vocabulary that is actually going to benefit you rather than actually going against yourself, if it makes any sense. And honestly, what I'm really excited about is the many rhetorical appeals that we're going to have to implement. I hope there is no writing limit, since I really want to express myself to the fullest on what my actual truth is. But I feel that in all, being a skilled communicator really just kind of comes down to, hold on, let me go back. Being a skilled communicator is also being able to find strategies in identifying main issues, such as 1984's main issue, which was of course about which was I don't know how to explain it, but it was more about I don't want to say totalitarianism, but I'm not sure if it's that, or it's just rather full control of the people, not only from the outside but from the inside as well. So I feel like that was really one of the things that becomes like a more communicative approach. And also I was really a little also, I really enjoyed the breakdowns, actually. I didn't even know what to say. I really enjoyed the breakdowns, actually. I was able to break the chapters down in a way where I actually understood it, where even if I didn't understand the book after I read it, once I started going back to it and actually making my own story, analyzing it, summarizing it, important details, this made me realize that I actually understood the book more than I actually expected. And I feel that's also kind of the same way where we use a target audience, which is also kind of a portion of how to become a skilled communicator. And that is a portion of the skilled communicator part of the portrait of a graduate. This portion will be about the collaborative problem solver of a portrait of a graduate. And honestly, reading such as 1984 and the other novels from previous years, because I just cannot stop talking about the other novels from previous years, really helped me reflect the importance of community. Because honestly, when we don't have community, yeah, we might as well just be dead, honestly. And I feel that also it comes in that I feel like this is where the ambitious people come in and kind of really try and create solutions for these problems, because at the end of the day, we're never going to fix the issue. We're never going to actually resolve an issue entirely unless a government tries. And I feel that that's where ambition comes in, because you know probably the change won't happen within your lifetime, but you really want to be known for that change because it's something you truly care about, and that is really important to become a collaborative problem solver. And following alongside the skilled communicator, fifth period actually makes really great points to make various solutions to problems, because like you mentioned before, we can talk about the issues all day long, we can talk about them in our sleep, but when can we name a solution to the problem? You can have a billion reasons why it's bad, but no one's going to actually bring up a solution. And that made me really reflect on how, like what Danny said throughout that one class conversation, we completely forgot about the kid who was fatally shot. And now there was this other kid who was supposedly in middle school that was shot and killed in a homicide in Salinas, right near Cesar Chavez and Alisal, somewhere around there. And no one really talked about it. No one spoke up about it. And I feel when we leave too much issues on the plate or on the background, we really don't become collaborative with each other, because we're so divided on all these issues that are important to us that we sometimes just forget to get along, and we sometimes forget to get together and actually learn how to solve these issues. And this really proves the point that class discussions are important to create solutions, because you may have one solution, but another person has a different solution. And when we only stick to one solution by one person, and no one is like willing to speak out about their ideas, we're never gonna get anything done, unfortunately, unless the person's really sure about the idea. And collaborative problems, like I mentioned before, to summarize the previous points, collaborative problem solving doesn't necessarily mean to address the issue and lay it back. It actually means to do something about it. And for whatever reason, I cannot stop thinking about Nazi Germany and how it connects so much to 1984. It probably does, actually, since George Orwell actually worked in one of these places, like the Ministry of Truth, I think it was, I don't know. And going back at it, there are so many correlations to 1984 and Nazi Germany, like I mentioned before. They had a common enemy. Who was a common enemy? Goldstein. Who was 1984's common enemy? Goldstein. Who was Nazi Germany's common enemy? The Jewish people. I don't want to say the sons of me. I'm just going to say Jewish people. Jewish people. That's all I can think of right now. And there was probably hope. Kind of the same way where O'Brien basically lured his victims into giving them hope. And it's kind of the same way with like the one movie from a couple years back that I'm so obsessed with, Swing Kids, which kind of talk about the Nazi regime and how there was these youth, the Hitler Youth group, and how people used to actually rebel through swing, which is kind of the reason why which you can make a connection with where teenagers rebelled through swing and forbidden music, as to Winston, where he rebels through actually speaking about his own, or not speaking, but writing down his mind, his thoughts and everything. And throughout all these issues, we could talk about the issues like I mentioned before, but how are we going to leave a strong legacy is what made me draw myself to the question. And in order to really understand why, we kind of need to go back to the culturally competent part, since culture also plays an important role in how society actually perceives the world. Because some, religion, traditions, Dia de los Muertos, Chuseok, Happy Chuseok, the New Year's, the Chinese New Year, there's so many things that differentiate us, but I feel like that's such a beautiful thing. That's a topic for another thing, for the culturally competent one, but it also kind of makes you realize that maybe these differences are kind of what gives us different solutions, of course, but it also helps us further solve issues in minority groups when we actually have perspectives of other people. And one thing that has really stuck out to me throughout this year was that one thing I really want to implement throughout my life, and I still do, is that we are learning something new every day. We all seek perfection, and I can very much see that in the class discussions. Everyone strives for that perfect answer because we're scared of getting judged, we're scared of getting we're really afraid to actually be judged and opposed by our views. But I feel when we try to aim for the perfection throughout the class discussions, more specifically, we kind of end up doubting ourselves, and we just never end up saying anything because we are constantly thinking to ourselves. This also correlates back to the empowered learner with the whole self-positive talk, that when we strive for the perfect answer, we're all going to get the same answer. If we quote unquote strive for the perfect answer, we're never going to get any solutions other than just that one solution. So that is why it's really important to also be really extravagant on being able to collaboratively solve a problem, because the portrait of a graduate all really much connects together. When you become culturally competent by learning each other's culture, when you become emotionally intelligent, etc., you really learn a lot. Not just about how to solve an issue, but how to help, how to take action right now. And honestly, I kind of do see why these class discussions are so important, because when we come together and think of various solutions, it gets the work done, actually. And that is the end of the collaborative problem solver portion of the portrait of a graduate. And this part will be the critical thinker portion of the portrait of a graduate. And throughout this semester, I really found a passion for reading. My proficiency and in reading the book improved, and I might have to say that 1984 was probably one of my favorite readings throughout high school. And that beats Animal Farm, that beats House on Mango Street, that beats what else does it beat? Actually, it might be tied up with Things Fall Apart, because I really like that one. And throughout it just made me realize, how can I actually, what do I get from this book? What do I get from, what lessons do I learn? Why does it matter? All of these questions that actually circulate around you is the process of critically thinking. And you can also see that in the STAR rating test. I honestly really don't work well with tests. I can't sit still. I really need to move. And I may do well, or at least slightly above average, but I really want to, I really can't do anything much about my problems, but I feel that actually reading it, being able to solve, and actually, I really love the illumination method, because it makes me a critical thinker, saying, oh, this question is obviously wrong since it wasn't in the same, especially during the APLC test. Oh, this answer's wrong, then it must be the most accurate one. And the reading stamina, I'm going to be honest with you, I never really paid attention to the reading staminas. I actually only paid attention to it the first couple of 2 months, because it helped me keep track of my time, it helped me keep track of the words I read, the pages I read per minute, and because of that, I just really stopped caring. And I feel the process of that is kind of being able to critically think about the book when you're so immersed into it, which kind of goes back to one of the other topics I previously talked about and that I don't remember, is that when you kind of ignore these rules, you become a critical thinker by actually immersing yourself. You just think about it in the moment. There's just some things that you really can't explain, that can only be experienced when you were in the moment. And I feel that sometimes the reading stamina really gave me that opportunity to actually keep track of what I am reading, what I can do to improve. And the blog titles are such a struggle, because I was trying to choose the perfect title, but then I realized, even if it's a simple quote, if it resonates through my heart, then I will do it. My work will reflect the reason why I chose the blog at the end of the day. And I feel part of that is also kind of seeing what your likes is. You also get to explore what you are emotionally attached to, what you want the reader to think about you. Because the whole part of a critical thinker is to actually ask questions, is to ask rhetorical questions that should be answered, or this and that, vice versa, I don't know. And I feel that's also really important, especially if you're trying to, for those that are doing the AP Bio test, where you have to write an FRQ, prayers to that, you actually have to critically think about what you're doing, especially if you have one answer wrong, you're done. The imitation writing, those were pretty hard. It made me have to critically think about what diction I should use, how should my sentence structures flow. There was a lot of rhetoric that was used within Leonard Pitts's writing. But I feel that because of that, I was able to actually improve on my critical thinking skills, because it made me realize, oh, I actually have to twist the words. I actually have to use certain diction in order for it to flow nicely. The PCT. Honestly, Desmos saved my life. I feel that being able to also critically think is critically thinking about how to use Desmos. If you don't know how to use Desmos during the PCT, good luck. But I feel that watching all those videos about Desmos hacks really made me critically think about how easy it is to find the answer if you try. Really, it's not that hard. You can. And besides that, especially in the English portion, since there's no calculator, of course, it made me critically think about how to actually implement the answers to the question. To the prompts, to the questions, and actually do the elimination method, whether it actually works or not. And that is another way. And creating discussion questions. Honestly, when I was creating the discussion questions, I never really considered what I didn't know. I only considered what I knew, because I understood like the foundations, like the proper foundations of the chapter. So it was hard for me to actually get the stuff done. But I feel like one thing I could have done better was to actually go beyond the book, talk about issues that are not in the book, and how that kind of correlates back to 1984. Just 1984, because that's all we read for now. And how to critically think about those, because when you critically think, you're actually putting your brain to work. You're putting the juices, you're putting everything in it just to actually, make it sound sense. So when you're creating a discussion question, you're critically thinking about, how is the reader going to interpret this? How is this question going to be answered? You kind of think things in advance, and you actually have a plan for it as well. So that's the beauty of critically thinking in creating the class discussions. And outside of class, I actually do kind of critically think how I'm going to manage all my work. Like, usually I just procrastinate on most of my work, like I've done for a while, and I critically think whether or not it's worth it to actually turn in the paper on time, or actually just wait another day and give myself some free time. And it's not only just about school, it's also about critically thinking what chores you should do first, what what is your schedule looking at, what should you sacrifice, what are the repercussions of sacrificing this certain event for another event. We actually critically think all the time. It's just that we don't really notice it because it's so ingrained within our life that we kind of forget to consider the fact that we are critically thinking about decisions most of the time. And that concludes the critical thinker portion and my final reflection for semester 1, 2025. Thank you.